Good afternoon. It is April 2020, almost May 2020. It's been a few weeks since I got to this section of the podcast. I spent a bit of time last week on actually a YouTube video with a breakdown of some electronic music where I had wanted to start with a graphic score and then talk through how I realized that into a piece of music. That took a little bit longer than I thought, partly because I screwed up the recording in the first instance and had to go back and do it again. I thought I was doing something clever with the microphone where I could mix in a line feed from the modular, and I actually did that wrong. So there was nothing there. It was just me talking and then dead air. So hopefully that is not what is happening right now. Today I'm continuing my read-through of poems about trains. I'm reading through the anthology called RailwayRhymes, edited by Peter Ashley. And today's poem is called The Cockney's Trip to Brummagem. And I will just jump right in and read it. You Birmingham lads, come and listen a while, and I'll tell you a story will cause you to smile. For the railway they're going to open next spring will life up from London to Birmingham bring. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. When the swell mobs come down, we must look out for squalls, or they'll bolt with the organ from out the town hall. They think themselves clever in every feat, but we'll show 'em one more, boys. We'll show 'em more street. So reckon on sport when the cockneys come down, for they're all very flash from the fop to the clown. Whether tinkers or tailors or omnibus cads, we can learn 'em a tune called the Warwickshire Lads. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. The cockneys for boxing have long held the sway. This railroad will help us to meet them halfway. This much I can say without telling a crammer. If they'll find the anvil, we'll find our own hammer. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. They say every cock can crow on his own hill, but they must not come here empty pockets to fill. They may walk round our streets without trouble or pain. They'll have something to do to walk round Hammer Lane. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. We all know that London's a place of renown, and for my own part, I will not run her down. But I can't help thinking it'll be a queer thing to be fighting with cockneys in our old bull ring. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. So now to conclude and finish my song, may the railroad be finished before very long. May London and Brummagem unite and join hands and grow like the oak tree of our native land. And sing foul the diddle-le-row, sing foul the diddle-a. All right, so this is a good one. I like this. Has a thumping great rhythm going on. I mean, some of the other poems, even the ones that nominally are folk songs or popular ballads of some kind, can be a bit awkward in their scansion, and laying the language out on the beat. But not this one. There's not a pulse out of place. It just keeps going. And who doesn't love a good chorus, a good follow roll diddly diddle diddle do. So a couple things to orient here. The Cockney's trip to Brummagem. Brummagem, of course, is Birmingham. The Birmingham accent, I think, can be a bit mumbly. And Cockney London, the sort of the prototypical Londoner. And the idea being that there's a new railway between London and Birmingham, and that these shop fellas from London can come up and take advantage of the Birmingham scene. And the song then posits that Birmingham can take good care of itself. And, at the end, with that final rousing chorus, may even embrace the city of London, united by the power of Britishness, the great oak tree of our native land, as it ends. So let's orient a little bit, right, before we talk about the swell mob coming up for their fighting. There are a couple of references that I'd like to talk through. So right off the top, we'll show them one more, boys. We'll show them Moore Street. Moore Street was the railway station in Birmingham. And this, of course, was back when a railway station was a thing of pride for a town or a city, that it was something that represented the emerging power of the place and of the connection with the rest of the world. I mean, for sure, the railway station represented also the rapacious nature of the stockholders and shareholders of the railway companies and the railway directors. And it also represented the harsh necessity of work. But within that is this romantic ideal of what the train and what the station means and meant. And in the Victorian times, when architecture tended to be a bit more civically oriented. Let me rephrase that. Architecture is always a representation of power. It's just that with time we can look back on the Victorian architecture and see it as elegant and representative of a time when city civility and commerce were more closely intertwined. But of course that's nonsense. It was a representation of the awful authority of the empire, as opposed to now when we're confronted with the faceless authority of the corporate world. These are things that teleport in and are pressed down onto the living landscape. They are not things that emerge up. But the scale of a Victorian railway station is different from a glass postmodernist corporate headquarter. And although it is possible that in 100 years' time we will look back on these 21st century corporate structures with some nostalgia, it's hard for me to see that today, whereas today I can look back on places like St. Pancras Station or Piccadilly Station in Manchester and have some fondness. Even the old Amtrak station here in Pittsburgh, which actually isn't used for the train station any longer. It's used as offices, and the train stops at a sort of a corrugated hut next to the old station. Has a civic presence that I think is deliberate, and I think that we can appreciate without qualification. There are plenty of qualifications to have when we look at architecture that is constructed by the dominant economic force in a given society. And the railways certainly were those, both here in Pittsburgh when that station was built, and certainly in Birmingham when this poem was written or this song was being sung. But I digress. I'm getting away from the joy of the poem itself. So Moore Street was the Birmingham station, and it runs into Marylebone Station in London. Extra credit for listeners, particularly American listeners, who know the 4 train stations on the London Monopoly Board. All right, so you all paused there and you went and Googled, so everyone gets the extra credit. Those stations are Marylebone, Liverpool Street, Fenchurch and King's Cross. I am most familiar with King's Cross in part because that's the station that you leave when you go up the East Coast to Cambridge or further north, eventually to Edinburgh. And that's a train trip that I've taken a number of times when we've visited family who are in Norfolk, around Cambridge, and are in Edinburgh. So it's a natural route to take from London King's Cross up out through the East Coast and up through Northumbria. It's very beautiful, a beautiful train ride if you are so inclined. So that's Moore Street. Then the other reference in the third stanza, they say every cock can crow on his hill, but they must not come here empty pockets to fill. They may walk round our streets without trouble or pain. They'll have something to do to walk round Hammer Lane. And so I thought, reading this, Hammer Lane was another neighborhood in Birmingham, perhaps a neighborhood of ill repute, if you know such things, or at least a place that has a reputation for being a bit tough. But it actually refers to a person. I did a quick scan and found out that it refers to a boxer called John Lane, who was undefeated. And so there's a bunch of boxing references in this poem that end with a reference to Hammer Lane, the undefeated John Hammer. So there you go. The honor of Birmingham will be defended in Bull Ring, which is the fighting location, perhaps like Madison Square, where the big, or I guess Las Vegas, like I don't know anything about boxing, wherever big boxing places take place, boxing fights, boxing matches, contests, a boxing event, wherever they take place. So you have Moore Street, and you have John Hammer, and you have this idea of the connection between London and Birmingham. And interestingly, I was in London recently for work. I say recently; it was 6 months ago. It certainly wasn't recent in the sense of a month or two, but within the last 6 months. And I was walking around the Docklands, which is where the office that I was working from was located, and I was walking, my hotel was around there as well, but I was out getting some fresh air. And of course, there's an enormous amount of construction there, as there is in every financial area in every capital city in the world. There's a big billboard for a new luxury high-rise apartment building. Again, totally normal because they're building one of those every 6 weeks. What was unusual is this building was in Birmingham. And they were advertising you could have this level of luxury, I guess, cheaper than it would cost in London, and with a 3-hour commute. Get the heck out of here. That's not bad, right? And I think in part that was anticipating the new train line that may be built there, the HS2, the high-speed 2, that is at least being positioned as a way of boosting the northern economy. That positioning may be deceptive, but I won't make any comments about politicians and the promises that they make. Not here, not today. So the last thing I'd like to talk about then, there's a reference to a tune called the Warwickshire Lads, right? So reckon on sport when the cockneys come down, for they're all very flash from the fop to the clown. Whether tinkers or tailors or omnibus cads, we can learn them a tune called the Warwickshire Lads. It's a rousing number. It's a Revolutionary War song. And when I looked around to find the lyrics in the tune, I learned that it was included in a celebratory production called The Jubilee in honor of William Shakespeare in 1769. And that this is the collection that is usually referred to when people sing from this song. So the lyrics: Ye Warwickshire lads and ye lasses, see what at our jubilee passes. Come revel away, rejoice and be glad, for the lad of all lads was a Warwickshire lad. Be proud of the charms of your county, where nature has lavished her bounty, where much she has given and some to be spared, for the bard of all bards was a Warwickshire bard. Warwickshire bard, for the bard of all bards was a Warwickshire bard. Warwick is on the River Avon, famous for the Stratford, that is Stratford-upon Avon, the birthplace of William Shakespeare. Warwick, I learned as I was reading in the Guardian article, What to Think About When Thinking About Moving to Warwick. I learned that J.R.R. Tolkien got married in Warwick. And I think you can sort of envision the kind of bucolic, cottagey, quasi-industrial landscape that Tolkien writes about in the Shire with hobbits, and that's probably what Warwick looks like. But the Warwickshire lad sounds like a right decent fella. He reminds me of a character I wrote a song about called the Waggoner's Lad. The Waggoner's Lad was a bit of a rake, and he went around carousing with friends and family and ladies along the way. If I can remember where there's joy to be had, I'm the Waggoner's Lad, and I'll come with a heave and a hey. I'll fill up my load and I'll head for the road and be gone by the break of the day. Yeah, that's right. I can't remember the melody. All right, so I've moved over to the piano. And the melody for the Warwickshire Lads goes a little bit like this. Ye Warwickshire lads and ye lasses, see what at our jubilee passes. Come revel away, rejoice and be gay. The lad of all lads is Warwickshire, Warwickshire. Lad of all lads is the Warwickshire lad. Yeah, I have no idea how the lad of all lads was a Warwickshire lad. Lad of all lad was a Warwickshire lad. The lad da dee da da Warwickshire lad. Dee da dee dum, dee da 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 da. Lad of all lads, Warwickshire lad, da da dee da da dee da 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 bum bum bum. Right, so that was a little bit of floofery and nonsense, but there you go, the Warwickshire Lads. A nice bit of context for the poem.